Okay, we're live. I'm here with Alison Monday. I'm so excited to introduce her to you guys if you don't already know who she is. Alison's a WordPress designer, developer, and security guard behind Tiny Blue Orange. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Alison was I remember being in a Facebook group and hearing your client love package. Like, I remember hearing about the package you put together for your client, and even the fact that you booked in your calendar, I think 1 year away from when your client actually launched their website, and you actually had a bit of a like celebration party thing for your client. So in my mind, you sort of have a reputation for being this person about client love, and I'd love to know a bit more about your own journey into, how that happened. Was it always that way in the beginning? And just like, I'd love to know a bit more about your journey.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I love what you're doing, so I think there's a lot of mutual love going on. But basically, like super long story short, because right, we could all go there. I had a lot of the traditional jobs growing up, right? Like I worked at a lumber yard, and I worked at the mall in a clothing store, and like worked at a restaurant. So I had all of those experiences. And while working at the mall on Christmas Eve sucked, the end of the day, I loved helping my customers. If a husband came to me and said, I need something for my wife and I have no idea how to get this for her, I was able to help him, and that lit me up. That like totally was my thing. And so I went to school for graphic design, fell in love with web, fell in love with coding, learned that not all designers love coding, and so that's kind of how my business has evolved into helping a lot of designers. But kind of like in the back of my head, I knew that I love serving customers, but it wasn't until I was deep into this that I realized being an entrepreneur and being self-employed matched up with that. It was like I always thought, oh, well, I'm doing what I love because it's what I went to school for. Well, no, I'm directly serving clients and I'm directly solving problems. So that customer service end was always there, but I think it was a little bit buried. It was kind of like back burner, not in the sense that I wasn't taking care of my clients, but I was like, oh, I'm a graphic designer, or, oh, I'm a web designer. And then really started to figure out that these things that I thought were common were setting me apart. So the biggest lesson I learned is that not everyone replies to emails. And that like honestly breaks my heart. But I literally have it in, because every year, it's really small, but I just write a book of like the Tiny Blue Orange business plan for the year. And so I just like set like, here are my, it's almost like a manifesto kind of. And every year the very first one is reply to all emails within 1 business day. It's like, it doesn't have to be instant. You don't have to live in your inbox, but just answer emails. Like, hey, got your message. I'll get back to you. Or here's the answer that you're looking for. I can't tell, like, seriously, that running joke, like, if I had a nickel for every time a client thanked me for replying to emails, and, like, that's so sad. So, and, like, we all have those days where, like, our inbox feels like it's a monster taking over, and so it's literally, like, I'll run down the list and be like, got your message, I'll be back to you in X time frame.
I'd love to know, do you have any kind of email inbox strategy? Like, do you use this getting things done strategy, or do you?
Yeah. So like productivity and that kind of stuff, I love. Like I geek out on it. So the Skillshare class by Tiago, the 21 days to get shit done or get
Design your workflow. Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, that one was phenomenal. And so that one really like, because I had read Getting Things Done, but something about it just didn't click. And so that Skillshare course really helped me. So I use that a ton for like Evernote. That's how I deal with all my stuff. But in terms of my inbox, so I have a couple rules. Like I don't live in my inbox. I check it twice a day. And I have it open, obviously there's exceptions, right? But I have it open for 1 hour. And then I literally have a blocker. So it will block my email.
Do you use a tool for that then?
Yeah, so it's a Chrome extension called Web Blocker. There's stuff like Self-Control. There's that app and that sort of thing. But basically, like, it kind of forces you to hunker down and respond. And even if it is that thing of like, hey, got your message, I'll get back to you. I hear you, right? So many clients just want to hear that, like, I hear you or I see you. And so I try to flow through it and not keep things in there as to-dos, because that's just no fun and it's like daunting and overwhelming.
So how do you manage your to-dos? How do you sort of translate what comes through in an email into actionable next steps? You said you use
Absolutely.
Evernote?
Yeah, so I'm sure we can all relate. Like, I'm gonna try all the things because there's so many. And I've tried project management stuff like Basecamp and all that. But really, at the end of the day, like, I need things to be simple, otherwise I'm not going to use them. So basically, when I'm funneling through my inbox, I use Apple reminders because I'm a Mac girl, and because I have this like deep burning anger for the fact that we can't delete apps from the iPhone, like the Stocks app. Sorry, tangent. So it's like, you know what? If this app lives on my device, I'm going to try it. What's the worst that happens? So basically, I have, you can make lists. So I have a list for every client, and then I just plug to-dos in there, and then every morning I go through and review. So then when I process my inbox, if it's something where a client literally needs me to reply to them, okay, cool, done. But if it's a task, I will write that task in reminders. And just because I'm kind of a mega nerd, I always write out the task, with my client's acronym. So like Tiny Blue Orange, I always refer to it as TBO. So I would type TBO dash and then the task. And that way it kind of helps. If I'm viewing all my tasks to do, I might lose context. And then if there are notes in the email that are relevant, a lot of times clients are like, hey, can you update X plugin? Okay, cool, I don't need anything. But sometimes clients are like, hey, we added 3 new employees, here are their photos, here's their bios, da, da, da. So then I will forward that email to Evernote, and it will land in my inbox, and then I can put it in their, in their notebook that I have for them, and plug that note link into the task in my Reminders app. So then it's all kind of synced together, but when I'm processing email, I'm processing email. When I'm doing tasks, I'm in my Reminders app. And there's some automation things that you can do as well, but for me, that's just worked the best. Sometimes I'm like, oh, should I just use Evernote? But Evernote reminders aren't quite there yet for me. So that's why I found that the Apple reminders, and then I can have my personal to-do list on there as well, like I'm at Target, okay, I need this. So that's what's worked well for me, absolutely.
Very cool. And I'm sure client love isn't something that was super easy from the beginning, right? Because we're all kind of learning how do you manage how many clients you can take on at once, and it's a bit of a learning process. So I'd love to know, how many clients do you juggle at one time, and has that changed over the years, and even, how you keep your clients excited throughout the process, and even setting those expectations has changed since maybe when you first started.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, oh my gosh, so many great things to talk about there. So definitely, I am a natural born people pleaser. So it was one of those things where like I totally overbooked myself out of the gate. Like anybody needed a project, okay, how can I help you? And so then I found myself working late nights, working through the weekends, and it was one of those where I was like, okay, I want to help people.
However,
but I want a life. Like I didn't quit my job to be literally in my house all the time, working and then going to bed and then working. So for me, it was definitely a struggle because, like I said, I'm a people pleaser. And so when I made the realization that letting someone go, whether that's not taking on the project, whether that's saying, you know what, we're not a good fit, whatever the reasoning, letting them go is in fact helping them, because I'm helping them find someone that can dedicate the right amount of time, that isn't overworked or working on their project at 10 o'clock at night, which might not be a bad thing, but if they want to interact with you, that might be tough. And so when I kind of made that mental shift of I'm helping them because they're going to find somebody that delivers and that is there for them, that really helped. The other secret, although it's not as easy as that one, is I hired an assistant, and she filters all incoming requests. So we have a spreadsheet, and it's super simple, but basically I found that having 4 projects in terms of like development or design at varying stages is where I'm happy. Like that's my cap. And so we fill out that spreadsheet, and so then she looks at it and goes, oh, no, there's 4 projects lined up. Okay, cool. Oh, hi.
The choice of working for yourself. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I had to lock my 2 dogs out because I knew they would start like fighting underneath the desk. So anyway, so she can look at that and be like, nope, she's filled up until X. We can't add any more. No exceptions. Sorry if your sob story is really good. So she's
and how do you book people in? Like, I'm curious how far in advance you'll book someone out if you're full for now. You know, how do you kind of?
Yeah, I struggle with that because it had like the furthest my wait list has ever gotten was 6 months, which like at one point was really cool because I was like, yeah, I don't have to worry about my bills for 6 months. However, in 6 months I changed my prices. In 6 months I had projects delay, and I had, you know, like all of the things that happen. So, and it's interesting too, once it reached 6 months, like that was kind of almost too long for other people. So it kind of naturally stopped, which was good. But I think I like keeping it around 3 months, 2 to 3, because, you know, anything beyond that, and I might be like, screw it, I'm not doing this type of project anymore.
Or maybe you want to build a course, right? Like I know you're working on your Client Love course, but if you don't build that into your schedule and that buffer time, it's never going to get done, right?
Absolutely. And so that's like one thing that I've done too, is Monday is Tiny Blue Orange Day. So I don't do client work. That's when I'm blogging. That's when I'm doing admin stuff that my assistant doesn't do. That's when I'm writing content for courses or emails or anything like that. Because, yeah, if it didn't get scheduled, like, it would just be clients all the time.
That's amazing. And I'm curious, like, I assume that's something you let your clients know about, and you say, like, I'm only available Tuesday to Friday. And, of course, that leads into, like, how do you actually set those expectations with your clients, like a welcome package?
Yep. So, yeah, that's a perfect, I feel like I didn't answer the other questions, but that's okay.
There's so many things to talk about.
All the things, hashtag. So basically, like, it's in my contract, and like out of the gate, people understand because we don't book calls on Mondays. So like if a client wants to talk to me about a project, or I guess a lead, right, they don't even get the chance to talk to me on Mondays. But then we hop on the call, we talk about it. And so then, yeah, I have a welcome kit that I sent to clients, and it started out as an email. That's easy enough. And it was just a PDF that I designed, you know, I mean, pretty. I put my logo on it. I use my fonts. And it just literally breaks down. It's a 1-page thing. Here's how to contact me. Here's when I'll respond. You know, here, and not to be like a jerk about it. You know, like I don't want to flood them with info that they don't care about. But if it's something like, oh, this is a perfect example. So because I don't live in my inbox, people would sometimes get like panicky. Like, what if I need you? I'm like, well, you can call me, because the phone is a great way to get a hold of me. But I have a lot of clients who might be international or anything like that, so that kind of gets it weird. So I set up a system where if urgent is in the subject line, I get a text on my personal cell phone.
Oh, that's great. How do you, I'm curious how you set that up.
Yeah, so if this, then that, so iftt.com. Basically, you know, you go in, I use Google Apps, so you go in, it's like, subject contains the word urgent, send text message. So I don't even have my business email on my phone. This was like part of the boundaries of like, I need a life. And obviously I can choose to respond to those emails, but at the very least then my clients know, use the word urgent, and here's what's going to happen. But the catch to that, and this is in the welcome sheet, is it says, if you use this, you are agreeing to rush rates, which we've already spelled out.
I love that.
Yes.
I love it.
So it's like, your fires are not my fires, right? And, you know, like, let's be clear. If their site is down, like, I'm going to try to help them out. But, you know, if you have something that you're panicking about, and it's something, you know, that was lack of planning on your part, or, you know, just you dropped the ball or whatever it is, there are consequences to that, but I am here to help you. So, tangent but relative.
That's great.
So yeah, it has in there, and then yeah, it has that my work hours are Tuesday through Friday. And I actually had a client call me out on this the other day. I sent her an email late Monday afternoon. I was like, "Oh, I wrapped this up for you," and she wrote back. She's like, "I thought you didn't do client work on Mondays." I was like, "Oh,
You got caught.
I'm like, well, you know, that's the good part about making the rules is I can break them. You know, like I had finished my list for the day and I was like, you know what, I have an hour, I'll just knock out some things to get started on the week. So yeah, but it was hilarious. It's like I got so nervous to bring this up to clients and be like, ooh, I'm only available 4 days a week. Like that's not normal. And I can't tell you how many clients were like, that is so smart. I'm going to do this for myself. Exactly, that sort of thing. So yeah, it was really funny. It was just kind of like, so existing clients, right? All of a sudden I implemented this thing and I was like, okay, well, new clients, I can send them this worksheet and be like, yeah, I'm not going to work on Mondays. But what about the clients that I've been working with for a year? And so I just emailed them and I was honest. And I said, look, I'm changing up how I do my business. Instead of doing all of these tasks throughout the week, I'm focusing them on one day. It's going to start in 3 weeks. Let me know if you have questions.
Was it an issue for anybody?
No. And again, some people wrote back and was like, that's so smart. And I think Jessica Hish actually wrote a great article about, because she does Mondays as well, as her admin day. You know, it could be Wednesday, it could be Friday, who cares? But it's just that has worked so well for me.
That's really great because I think for me, Mondays almost feel kind of daunting. It's like, oh gosh, the week is starting. There's so much to do. But putting a different spin on it's kind of nice, like to look forward to Monday and saying, great, that's my admin and taking care of myself and my own business day. I think that's a really great idea.
Totally. Yeah, and that was the thing is I was like, oh, maybe I should do Friday because that's a pretty quiet day. I was like, no, I love that it's quiet because then I'm like knocking stuff out for clients and sending it to them and feeling like I can kind of wipe my hands of it, you know, and be like, I did this, now it's the weekend. And yeah, I mean, right, like with people all over the world, like if I'm working on a project for somebody in Australia, it's actually their Saturday, and you know, like, so it's like that stuff really doesn't matter that much in the end.
So you do break a bit of those boundaries. I mean, like, do you, I assume, sometimes work in the evenings and weekends as well?
Totally. I was working last night too. And, you know, we have talked about this a little bit, like out of this realm is with, you know, health issues or with being sick. It's like sometimes you just have to step up to the plate. And like I said, I make the rules so I can break the rules. But really, like, really trying to hunker down and have like a, not 9 to 5, but somewhat of a normal schedule. I hate to say it this way, but it trains my clients on how to treat me and what to expect from me. And so even if I'm working nights and weekends, 90% of the time I'm using Boomerang to send the email during a normal business hour, or I'm just saving the draft and I'll send it later. But then it's like out of here, right? Because otherwise it just like goes around like, oh shit, I have to do this and I have to do that. So yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I just have to step up to the plate, but
setting expectations just seems like it sets your whole project up, and I'm sure there's so many points even throughout the project where you're setting expectations, even in terms of what kind of feedback you're looking for if you're working on a project. Like, I'd love to know more about even throughout a project process, you know, what kind of things have you seen get tripped up, or the client, you know, isn't sure, or maybe I'm sure we've all had that experience.
Oh, totally.
Our project, so.
Yeah, and like especially, obviously, I know web. That's what I do, so I can speak to that. But like building a website, never-ending story. Content is the #1 thing that holds people up. And so I've started implementing things where, like, literally on my intake questionnaire. So before they've agreed to work with me, one of the questions I ask is, do you have your content? And the answers that they can choose from are yes, no, or I need help with that. And so that sets up the conversation of, I have a copywriter that I love, and I'm actually trying to partner up with someone who does content strategy. So it's not even just about copywriting, but it's about, like, what message are you trying to portray, and what's the sole purpose of this page and of itself, like calls to action, that sort of thing.
And that's a brilliant idea, and I'm just curious, how much do you participate in that process too, of like making certain recommendations just because you know the web and you're familiar with different marketing strategies and you've worked with some pretty, you know, big players. So do you ever go in and say, hey, like, this content isn't cutting it, like, I really recommend a copywriter?
Yeah, normally I say that for images. I think that's the biggest one. I have done it for copy of like, hold the phone, like you're like all over the place, like this is too wordy, you're losing people. And sometimes, I think this has been kind of this year. I've worked a lot with Morgan from A Little Creative, and she is like no nonsense when it comes to this stuff, which I love. Because sometimes I'll speak up, and the client will be like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, sorry. I'll use this content. We're good." Because sometimes, right, like you've said your piece, but sometimes it's like, all right,
You have to let it go.
they really love this slogan. Okay, like it's not gonna end the world. But yeah, like stepping into that role of like, hey, you've hired me, and this is what I know, and this is what I've seen succeed, so here's what's up. I'm really lucky in that a lot of people have hired me because they love my aesthetic and my copy. And so I get to kind of have that conversation because they approach it, because they're like, oh, your copy is so good. And I'm like, see, that's what good copy does.
And did you write your copy yourself?
No. Well, I shouldn't say that. So I hired a copywriter, and she wrote half of it, and then I took what she wrote and was inspired by it and ran with it. And so that sparks that conversation of like, hey, somebody can write your copy and it still can be very much you, and it still can feel like it's 100% you up on that page. And then, like I said, I have a partnership with her so that I can recommend her, because people see that she's amazing. So it's just one of those things where when I first started out, I'm from a small town. The online world was very new to me. I had an Angel Fire site growing up, but like, it's not the same as what it is now. Like all of my friends are online. And sorry, I totally went on a tangent and then like got sidetracked.
No, it's all good. There's so much to talk about when it comes to.
I know. I'm like, all the questions, all the answers. Yeah, I've lost it, so we'll just have to move on.
No worries. Like, tell me a bit about. I know you talk a lot about how important it is to get word of mouth clients. Like, that's the best and easiest way to kind of get new work. So, I know a lot of the designers. Some of them are overwhelmed and have tons of work, and others are just like, I'm just trying to get my first clients, and I don't know how to get there. So. Obviously, we know word of mouth is the best way to get new clients, but what about people that are still kind of trying to get their first few clients? I know you were kind of booked right out of the gate, but do you have any advice for?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I totally remember what I was going to say. Sorry. When I started out, I thought competition was a bad word. And I've learned that that is so not true. I keep a running note in Evernote of people that I want to recommend. And so it's that case of like, if my waiting list is too long or if a client isn't a good fit, I totally throw them out. And I think that totally relates to this concept of how to get clients. Is like, yeah, you can be looking for clients, right? But maybe you should be looking for people that do similar things that you do. Or maybe you should reach out to your Facebook group or to your Twitter chat or whatever and say, hey guys, I have an opening. And just being honest and being human, not being like desperate or gross about stuff, but just being like, hey,
I have some availability. Like, do you need some help with that?
That's it. I'm available. I had a project cancel, or my schedule's open and I'd love to fill it with a project of this type. Cool. Like, who knows somebody that can help?
Yeah. So and I feel like even just making it known, for example, like, hey, I'm really looking for identity work. I'm really looking for this. And then, of course, next time that comes in, I'm thinking about that person. I'm like, oh, yeah, like Sarah mentioned, she'd really love, that kind of project. So just making sure you're kind of top of mind to your peers.
Absolutely. And I think, that's something that I could have done a better job of, is because I went down this route of designer partnerships where I would develop. And then it's almost like the fact that I'm a designer got kind of like put off. And people are like, oh, you design? I didn't realize. I'm like, well, that's what my degree's in. So you're damn right I design. But yeah, like you said, just showing up and talking about what you want to do, right? Because like when I first started, I had logos on my site. And let me tell you, I do not want to do logos. But because they were in my portfolio, I got hired for those.
You get more of what you put out there, right?
Totally. And so kind of coming back to that word of mouth thing, so I think, yeah, like it can totally be your peers that help you. And the big thing, and kind of what this whole client love is centered around, is if you show up and do the work, your clients will love you. You know, kind of like how we started out this conversation of people like, oh my God, you write back. Like, that should not set me apart, but that does. And so those people want to continue to work with me because I reply to my emails.
I think this happens a lot with developers where, like, I know a lot have a bad reputation.
Totally.
A lot of people have been burned by developers, but I think even just like you said, admitting that you're human and saying, look, I overbooked, you know, this job is actually a lot bigger than I expected, and just that admitting that you know, misquoted or misjudged and you need more time, that communication is everything. Just saying that you need that time is, it just, people understand they're human. We all make mistakes, so
100%.
Showing up can make such a huge difference.
Totally, and it was one of those things, so like, again, not going to bore everyone with my life story, but I've been dealing with these chronic migraines and tension headaches for the last year. And I started out, like, when this happened, and I tried to hide it. Like, I tried to, like, muster through and, like, get on my computer from my bed, like, you know, lights off, computer as dim as I possibly could, and, like, try to do stuff. And I'm like, I am not doing them a service. I am not showing up. And so I started to let people in, and of course, like, as I posted on Facebook, because some of my clients are my friends on Facebook, you know, started to be a little bit more vulnerable with them, and the response was incredible. And it was just like, you know, an outpouring of like, oh my gosh, what can I do to help you? And I'm like, whoa, like, we don't need to do that. But it was just kind of like, no, I'm running a business. They are in the same boat running a business. They know that if their kid gets sick, and all of a sudden they have to run to the doctor, like, oh shit, how am I going to get this done? Or if they get sick, you know, it's just one of those things where, especially in this online world, you forget that it's a human being on the other end. And even if you're working with a big company, right, even if you're not working with solopreneurs, it's made up of human beings. And so sometimes, like, you know, we've all heard, like, clients from hell, like, we've all had those clients. Like, sometimes when I'm standing here, like, I am so mad. Like, this person is being a jackass. I'll hop on the phone with them. And it's scary, and sometimes it's a little overwhelming because I'm like, oh, I'm going to swear at them or whatever. But the truth is, when you have that voice and when you have that human connection, all of the, like, misreadings and misinterpretations of tone go away, and you realize that you are, in fact, working with another person.
I love that you brought that up. The phone call makes a huge difference. I always encourage, if you're ever in, like, a tricky scenario or there's been a misunderstanding, hop on the phone instead of trying to write, like, a 10-paragraph email and you can't read the tone. Like, it just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. And trust me, like, I'm so protective of my schedule. Like, I only have phone call hours, like, not even every day of the week, during certain chunks. But it's like, the end of the day, if I'm going to sit here and stew or, like, spend an hour trying to draft the perfect email when a 5-minute phone call would solve the problem, like, talking about productivity or, like, wanting more hours in the day, like, take all that crap back of, like, future tripping and worrying and, like, you know, stressing about it. And even it doesn't even have to be that big thing. Like, if there's a misunderstanding, that's going to be probably your best way to solve it, especially when it comes to design, because you're working with clients who don't speak the language, usually. And so, you know, right, like, make it pop. Okay, what does that mean? You know, and even simple things, like, I've gotten tripped up when a client has asked me to center something because I thought center horizontally, and they meant to center it vertically. You know, it's just little shit like that in the beginning where I was like, oh, duh, I know what they mean. No, you don't. So
and of course that ties in with all the expectation setting too, like how you let people know what kind of feedback you want, and just having that sensitivity to the fact that we often do use a bit of a vocabulary that our clients don't understand, and we make a lot of assumptions about where they're at.
Totally.
We have to sort of, like, tailor and adjust and be a bit more compassionate than we might be inclined in the beginning. And actually, what you brought up about clients being friends and in Facebook groups, like this is something I'm really curious about as well, because in the beginning I was always told, like, do not get personal with your clients, do not be friends with them, do not get personal. It's like the biggest mistake. And I feel like I tried that for so long, and it really it actually got awkward for me to separate a personal relationship from my clients. And I realized that in the small business entrepreneur universe, it's to my advantage to use my personal connection with people. It's way easier, projects go more smoothly, and it sounds like in your case too, you start to develop a personal relationship with your clients as well. And so I'd love to know, like, do those boundaries ever get pushed a little bit, and kind of how do you balance being friends and being personal but without letting it kind of, I don't know, cross the line?
Totally, and it has. It's I think one of the biggest things for me is like always have a contract. I don't care if you are my friend first, because right, like we get clients from our friends sometimes, especially starting out. It's like, dad's buddy at work needs a business card, and all this stuff. And so always have a contract. It's there to protect both sides of the party. But the other thing for me is is like just being honest. So, I've had numerous friends send me texts on my personal number about business. And I just, I've done the thing where I'm like, oh shit, okay, maybe if I reply to it as an email, but like that doesn't feel warm and fuzzy, like, so I'll just write back to them and be like, here's the answer, or I'm going to write back to you in my work email so we have track of this and so that I can keep my work brain in there where it belongs. And every single time it's been like, oh yeah, you're right, sorry, like, oh, thank you.
Training them.
Exactly. And just like Facebook, and not so much, this doesn't necessarily relate to friends, but like people will send requests for work through Facebook messages. And I'm like, like this is not, so I have a little script that I plop in and be like, can you send this email to? So that way it doesn't get lost with all of the really spammy crap that comes through Facebook messages. It's like, this is going to get lost in here. So yeah, I think just that communication, right? Like running theme, be human, be open, communicate with people. I'm trying to think of, thankfully I haven't had like too many issues with friends. I think, there's some of those lines blurred. My boyfriend is in IT, right? So every time we show up, it's like, oh, well, both of you are in computers, so can you fix our computer? And it's like, okay, hold up. Like if, a mechanic came over, you might ask him to fix your car, but so it's just being honest. And, if somebody's like, oh, my iPad won't connect to Wi-Fi, of course I'm going to help them. But yeah, just it's this rule of like, so I'm doing yoga training, and just this weekend they said, if someone comes up to you after class and has more than 2 questions or takes up more than 5 minutes of your time, your response is, we can go over this in a private session. Here are my ratings.
Great. Love that. It's so simple, and it doesn't sound bitchy. It's very simple.
I was like, that is genius. Because, right, like we get emails like, pick your brain or what's this, and I want to help people. Again, I'm a people pleaser. But at the end of the day, like, if I'm not working, products, passive income, whatever. But if I'm not working, I'm not making money. Yeah. And so if I'm just sitting here helping everybody, I have to pay my mortgage. And so it's just being clear with that.
Yeah, I just had this experience a few nights ago where I offered to do a one-on-one session with someone, like a quick meeting to see if I was a good fit for a consulting offering. I ended up having a 2-hour meeting, and then I was sort of mad at myself, like, how did I let this meeting go on so long? Like, why didn't I nip it in the bud? And because it was a new offering and I didn't have a structure around what the offering looked like, I think it was too open-ended, and I just,
totally.
Like, when do I interject? When do I cut her off? And so I sort of got down on myself, like, oh, girl, you need to like set better boundaries. So I mean, I still struggle with it too.
But you're human, right?
I think so.
If not, we still love you. No, it's one of those where like I take inspiration from so many different sources, right? So like that was my yoga teacher training. And when it comes to calls going over, I always think back to my therapist. Like she knows what time it is, and she, she's not going to like cut me off mid-sentence. But she very gracefully will like find a place to wrap it up and be like, okay, I'm writing down that we're going to talk about this next time you're in. When would you like to schedule your next appointment? And it's just seamless, right?
It's so simple. It
And so it could be
takes
the
training though, right?
Oh, totally. But that's like the inspiration for how to run your business can be anywhere, you know, like tying it back. I worked at the mall. Like that has served me so well, even though that was a very different style of position where, you know, it's like new customer every minute. And now it's like I have dedicated customers. But just learning how to deal with people and treat people and help people,
Yeah.
you can find that stuff anywhere.
And I think that's also why it's so important to involve yourself in, I mean, like-minded communities, but also communities outside of your own. Like, I don't know if you participate in masterminds, but it's so interesting to be with other business owners that are either in a service profession, like authors, you know, people in product development, and we all encounter totally different, you know, client scenarios. And it's just so interesting to hear how other people handle things like boundaries or client communication. And so I think, like you said, you can get that inspiration even from non-designers, from people in totally different industries.
Completely. And yeah, you bring up a good point, like products versus services. Like there can be a ton of overlap there. So having, you know, it might be as simple as I did this thing for a while called Breakfast Club. And it was once a month, just entrepreneurs in the area would get together for breakfast and just talk about whatever. And it, you know, it's nice because in this online world, you know, like you and I are having a connection right now, but unfortunately, that's not the same as being in person with someone. And so even just having that helps. It's a form of networking, but it's also a way for you to grow your business in terms of learning what other people do, learning what other people have done and failed miserably with, you know, and granted, you might not fail miserably, but it's just nice to like have that to bounce ideas off of or to learn from and just connect with.
And it reminds me too, like I think a lot of designers get down on themselves. They'll be like, oh, I didn't even know you could put together a welcome package. Like, oh, and it's never, you know, they're reworking their proposal every time. And I'm like, I rework my proposal with every new project. It's always changing. It's always growing because I'm always factoring in all that past experience. And I think we kind of need to give ourselves a bit of credit and permission to let our business be a work in progress because it will never feel done. I'm sure it will never, ever feel finished, right?
No. And it's, I related a lot to a website, right? So like there's this meme floating around of like Dwight from The Office, like, you think your website is done? False. And so basically it's this like running joke that like your website is always changing and like it's always something that you're going to be adapting. Even if it's just in 2 years the technology is different and you need to like come up to that, you know, whether it's responsive or the new thing or, you know, whatever. And so I think business is the same way. When somebody from the local college interviewed me about being an entrepreneur, I was like, learning. If I literally had to sum up this in one word, it would be learning. You are always learning. You're always learning about yourself, about your business, about your clients, about what works, about what doesn't work. And so, yeah, you have to be willing to kind of like dust yourself off sometimes. And maybe you don't even have to, but maybe it's just, okay, you know what? This didn't work the way I wanted it to. Next project, refined. Okay,
you
cool,
we're getting closer. Check your ego at the door, don't you?
Totally. Get rid of that. It's not doing any good.
I've become one with imperfection. I'm just so used to like the whole like, yep, oh, that was a mistake. I'll learn from that and move on. It's just part of the way.
Never doing that again. You know, and it never fails. I take screenshots of stuff on Instagram all the time on my iPhone and save it. Like, oh my God, why didn't I think of doing this? Like, oh, because I'm human and because, you know, like you don't have every single experience ever. You have to learn and you have to grow and you have to be like, I like this, I'm going to adapt it for me. This didn't work, I'm going to change it. But that's the great thing about what we do is going back to that, like we make the rules. So, hey, this proposal style, right? Yeah. This proposal style didn't work. Okay, cool, scrap that. So yeah, I think, and like for web, I've been playing around with prototypes and wireframes and and like, you know, not that I want to base everything I do off of one client's reaction, but, you know, if prototyping failed miserably in this one path that I took, okay, like think about why that is. Is that the right solution for me?
I'd love to know more, just as a
Yeah.
side, you know, your workflow in terms of actually presenting development work and even like as responsive.
Mhm.
Again, I hear a lot of designers and developers. How do I train my clients to know that this, you know, mock-up that I've done is not going to be pixel perfect on every single device, and I didn't have that conversation or I didn't mention it in the proposal, so how do I get clients on board with that, right? So I'm
Yeah,
sure
it
you've
is.
got
Yeah, literally 2 weeks ago, I put my foot down. Like literally, I was on the call and I with a friend, and I put my foot down. I was like, this is like the representation of me recognizing that I now have to design in browser, or if I'm still afraid to do that, I have to present a prototype that is functional. Because like the full width image thing is really what was the final nail in the coffin. I had a bunch of sites that were full with images, and clients did not understand how that would react on different size devices. And so, you know, on my 30-inch iMac, not that I ever view the internet full screen, um, but like your picture needs to be how many thousands of pixels long, and that means either it gets way tall or it's really skinny, and the proportions are kind of crazy because you wanted to show the background and didn't, you know, all this. So one thing that did help was finding examples. The danger with that is clients would then be like, "Ooh, I like that," like "Ooh, shiny syndrome." So I kind of, you know, that was one route that I tried, and I was like, "Oh shit, that didn't work," right? So then I like backtracked. And then the latest project that I'm working on, what I had done is I did the mock-up in Photoshop, and then I prototyped anything that moved. So I prototyped hovers, but literally like save sections as images just to make it like super quick and snappy. Um, like without fail, I presented it, and the client was like, "Oh, this isn't responsive." I'm like, "No, it's not. I told you that at the start of the call." Um, and so it was just one of those things where it's like, all right, I get it. My brain works that way, but my client's brain doesn't. And so, you know, at first I was like, oh, this sucks. But then I realized if I'm coding a prototype, I'm doing half of the development work, right? So like I might be prototyping in just HTML, like not WordPress, but I can still take those styles and apply them to the WordPress theme. You know, and it's not that my work time is going to get cut in half, but it's not a wasted effort. Like there is definitely something that comes out of that. So yeah, it's that has been an ongoing process. And like working with designers who give me files, and then like I disappear into the basement for a week or 2 or 3, and then come back and be like, here's your site. You know, that made people nervous. So finding a way to present and be like, don't look at anything else, just look at the header and the footer. Is that okay? So what I've literally started to do, because this is how I work, I do headers and footers inside, like basically the elements that repeat. I would literally cover up the entire content area with a solid fill box, right? So like whatever their brand color is, or usually I just do white because then it's not like a glaring, you know, like bright orange box. I would just cover it so they couldn't see the non-styled content and be like, okay, look at the header, look at the footer, you know, and then they're seeing progress. I've also seen people do, and I might try this, is they'll record videos of their screen so that the client can't click on other pages, but then they get to see something actually moving, and I've heard people really like that. So yeah,
cool. So you're
I'm
still
still
like in the
playing.
process of figuring out, you know, like what works well for one
Absolutely.
client might not work for the next, and
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think, you know, I'm a huge fan of systems. I love systems, but you have to recognize that there are going to be differences between each client.
That's awesome.
It's just straight up like like if you love Basecamp, there's going to be a client that's like, no, I won't use Basecamp, or you know, like I don't know. But there's going to be something that you have to do a little bit differently.
Definitely. And I actually just noticed that your headphones are also in your branded colors, and
Yeah.
I thought, I'd love to talk about the idea of creating a branded experience, because again, I know this is something that you take seriously. Like, you've got your welcome document, you've got your handoff and support document, and sort of the gifts that you send people even being like branded and themed. And so
Yeah.
how, I'm sure it's so important to make sure the whole experience of working with you feels delightful and kind of exciting from the beginning to the end. So I'd love to know, like, what elements do you use along the way to actually keep people really excited?
Totally. So I kind of did like show and tell, right? Like I brought part of, it's in my office. But basically, like I have these note cards and I just literally did them at Moo. But just using my font, just designed them. And then, so like my thing, obviously your cute little pooch showed up to the video. But my dogs are very much a part of my brand. This example, there we go. So I had Brutus sign all of the cards. So it's a very messy ordeal. We devote a couple hours to it every now and then. And I just paint his paw print and I, like conveyor belt down the line.
That's amazing.
So now I'm like, wait, with Pixel, like I'm going to have no room to write. But anyways, so like the clients are getting these things that say nerdy love, like, and it's bright orange. They know who it's by. It lights them up. And it's almost like, a trigger, right? And then, we talked a little bit about my welcome kit, so I wanted to give a little bit more. One thing that I do for clients is I'll send them, this especially ties into the wait list, is I'll send them a book that I loved.
Love
that
the
I think
books.
So like all of these are great books, right? So I'll send them a book that I think they would love or think they would benefit from. And it lets them know that I'm thinking of them. It gives them something to have on their nightstand, even though we're not going to work together for 3 months. Like, they could see me, and I have a bookmark. I did the same thing with Moo. It doesn't have to be Moo, but those are cheap. And it has my colors on it, and it says, I think you were here, and has a little arrow. So just my personality is like super infused into everything that I do. And then that way I'm front of mind for them. Right. So that's the other thing is like when you have your brand so consistent across the board, you are just helping reinforce that customer's opinion of you and help keeping that front of mind. So even if they don't need you, they'll think of you. Because it might be a situation where they recommend someone only because they literally were thinking of them. It might be that they forgot that they had a photographer friend that does the same thing because they don't think of them that much. So all of my PDFs, whether it's instructions on how to send a password or my welcome sheet or my project wrap-up, they're all branded in the same template. And so I use InDesign, so it's a template. Like, it's so easy to just plop in the content. Like, all of my emails, like even the signature has a little bit of fun and quirk. Out of offices, if I'm going out on vacation, I'll put a link to my Instagram hashtag in the out of office so people can see like what I'm up to, or I'll post a photo of Brutus doing something, in the email so that it just lights up their day. Because, like I said, customer service is very much a part of me, and so if I can make my clients happy, if it's a photo of a drooling bull mastiff that's going to make them smile, like, I'm all for it. So yeah, that kind of stuff. And then, one other example, because some people are like, oh, branding is so expensive, it's so hard to get right. Obviously, my business, being Tiny Blue Orange, is very rooted in color, but I hired someone to help me with branding.
You did?
Yeah, because it's like you're so in it, and I'm like, oh. And again, I hate logos. So we're working on this behind the scenes, a new Tiny Blue Orange facelift. But she sent me her Google Doc of questions, and I wrote all of my answers in orange. And the branding person that I hired commented on like, oh shit, this girl is her brand. Like I said, my headphones, you can look behind me, all of the art is blue and orange. And it doesn't have to necessarily be color, maybe it's personality. I definitely do a lot of lowercase writing. It doesn't carry over in emails all the time, but like, just simple things like that really kind of you know, you might not think of them being your brand in one instance, but when they're repeated, that becomes who you are, and that
But
becomes how your
being
clients remember
clear,
you.
being consistent, like I think that
Yes.
when you get so clear on what it is that you do, it's way easier for people to be like, oh yeah, she's the girl that blank, instead of, oh yeah, she's kind of a designer, I think she's a developer, she
Right.
does all these things. It's kind of hard to nail down, but
Totally.
I think
And
you've
that,
done an excellent job of like just tying so many different pieces together for yourself.
thank you. Yeah, and it's hard. Like when I started out, I was like, I'm going to do all the things because then I'll have business. Like, how can I have clients if I only do one thing? And I quickly realized that the more specific I got, the longer my wait list or the more steady my wait list was, and the happier I was. So even things like saying I do WordPress instead of just websites. I still have a couple of clients that I help out with Shopify and that sort of thing, but going forward, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a WordPress person because otherwise it takes a while for me to shift gears, and then I'm not finding my right people, and I don't know it as well, and all of that jazz.
You just get better qualified leads, right?
100%. And that's something too is like if you want these word of mouth, right, like bringing it back to that, if people know what you do, they know how to refer you. So, you know, if you do something for a client that isn't your norm, you know, maybe tell them or maybe say, like, if you know people that want X service, I'd love to, you know, get more clients like that. It doesn't have to be a big to-do of like, I did something really special for you and don't tell anybody. But just, you know, again, being honest and saying like, this is what I'm looking for. Do you know any friends that need this service? So, yeah.
Love that. And I know we've talked for almost an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I'd love to hear a bit more again about the course that you're putting together. And I mean, obviously, DSS is my first experience with moving more from services to course, but I'd love to know a little bit about is it a product service hybrid? You know, how you make time for it and what it's all about.
Yeah, so this is like kind of my baby. Like it's very new and I'm still playing with it. But kind of going back to the introduction you gave of when we were in that Facebook group and I said, here's my welcome packet. Somebody had asked a question about it, like how do you guys welcome clients or something like that. And I was the first one to respond and I put my list of what I do out there.
It blew everybody's minds.
And again, it was that perfect example of I was like, oh, here's what I do. You know, I can't wait to, like literally, to be fully honest, it was selfish because I was writing so that I would see what other people do because I absolutely hate it when people write following and don't contribute to the conversation. So it's like, here's what I do. And literally, like, I screenshotted the whole thing because I was in tears. Like, I was just blown away by people being like, Alison, you like so rock at this. And I was like, what? Like,
you had no idea because
I'm here behind my computer.
naturally.
Yeah, like this is what I do. So I'm here behind my computer writing little notes, torturing my dog by making him stamp cards. And people were just floored. And so I was like, all right, cool.
They took notice big time.
I'm on to something. And again, these health issues, like, if I'm not working, I'm not making money. And I'm working one-on-one with clients, which I love, but there's only so many hours in the day. And even though I'm not doing necessarily hourly work, you know, I have flat fee and value-based pricing for some things, it's still some of that, like, trading my time. And so it seemed like a natural transition. I've done an ebook and loved that process, but I was like, you know what, I want to dive more into this. So, and especially like a client love, customer service type thing, I was like, that's not something I could write an ebook, but really like it needs to be a little bit more involved. So right now, like it's truly like infancy stages. I'm going through and like picking out the content and kind of figuring out how I want to break it down. And actually, Morgan and I are pairing up. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks we're going to release it, a completely free course on how to get clients. Because I was like, oh, I'm doing this, and we're like, oh, but what about the people that like want clients to get and then want to treat them well? It's kind of like that chicken versus the egg thing. So yeah, working on that. And then the one thing I didn't want to forget, because I know you've asked me about this a couple times, and it's so easy. So I wanted to talk about that anniversary thing, because it's super quick. So basically when I start a project, I have an Evernote template that has a checklist, right? And because I do websites, I have a launch checklist. And so when a website launches, I have very specific things that I do. And the reason I don't do it at the beginning is because we all know launch dates can change. But on launch day, once I'm done, I literally put the anniversary on my calendar.
I love that.
And I have a Google Calendar that's project anniversary, so it doesn't screw up. Like, people can't book calls with me on this day because of a client anniversary. So it's separate. But I set a reminder to alert me the day before, and it has the year that it launched. And so every year I'm getting these client alerts.
Every year?
Well, yeah. So, and some people I'm like,
amazing.
oh shit, like they haven't emailed me and whatever. But I'm emailing them, especially the first year, right? So I'm emailing them and being like, congratulations, like your site is live and this is so fun. Your site has been live for a year, and how is it working for you? A lot of times I'll touch base before, and a lot of times people will hire me to do maintenance. But still, it's so nice to like recognize and like be like, what's happened in a year for you, right? Like, what has this website or this project done for you? And that's even a great opportunity to collect data from the client that you can then put on your site of like, they saw X increase in sales or X increase in visits or, whatever, that you can then use to market yourself, because we all know that like data and very specific info,
social proof,
right, that social proof thing, is huge. And so it's, it's literally like, a 30-second thing of like adding it to my calendar.
It makes a huge difference, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's, it can be a 3-sentence email. Like, guess what? Your site anniversary is tomorrow. And that's the other thing is, for a lot of projects, I don't send flowers on launch day. I send a thank you card, and then 30 days later I send a bouquet of flowers or a gift or something, because it's there's so much like groovy energy when a site launches. Like, clients are all like just like jittery and jazz hands and like so excited, and then it like quickly peters off, right? And so like keeping that momentum going. So I'll send them after a month and be like, you've survived the first month of your site. Like, this is awesome.
That's really thoughtful. It's amazing. A small gesture, but it's just
totally
so thoughtful.
And like I said, I still thank them on launch day. It's not like, well, your shit's done.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, peace. And then a month later, they're like, oh, she didn't fall off the face of the earth. But just like being that, it's almost right, like unique. So again, that goes back to standing out, and helping clients remember you. But just little things of, like I said, making clients feel good and making them smile and like continuing that good vibe. So stretching that out over a month has been huge. So absolutely.
Absolutely love everything that we've talked about today. Okay. Like, I'm already adding that to my to-do list for sure, just to make launches feel more special. Yes. I think you've really nailed that experience, and like your welcome package and the thank you, like all that stuff has inspired the stuff that I do too in my process. So like, yay. Thank you for setting the bar super high on the client stuff.
Shit, thank you. And that's one thing too, like in the welcome kit, there's a section at the bottom that says launches are very stressful for everyone. Make sure you schedule something for yourself.
Genius again.
It's literally 2 sentences. It is literally 2 sentences, but it's, it's one of those things where they're just so excited to get started, and then all of a sudden they're neck deep in getting their site launched, and they're like, oh my god, my head's gonna pop off, and like, go have a nice dinner, or or maybe you can do a vacation, but just take care of you, because this is gonna be a tough but fun project for both sides of the coin. So absolutely.
Again, that even just comes back to expectation setting, like letting people know that I empathize with you, like I understand what this process is like. It's very, even like launching DSS, you feel very vulnerable when you put yourself out there.
100%.
And I think I just have that much more empathy for clients now, launching new products and launching new services. I'm like, oh, I get why launching is really crazy stressful now. I understand. And so just showing that you understand and like give them permission to actually take care of themselves, I think that goes a long, long way.
Yeah, like I said, people want to be heard and they want to know that you're there for them. And I try to say, like, I'm the one launching the site. Like, you don't have to stress about it going live. But there's all this other stuff. There's promoting it on social media, and there's all the new emails you're going to get, and, you know, all of that.
Will they love me?
Right? Like, oh, God, what if there's a typo? So, yeah, it's just, like, we're all in this together. But, you know, if you take care of your clients, they're going to take care of you. Like, I think that's something that I've learned is, you know, that saying, I hate it, but, like, it's cheaper to retain clients than make new ones. Like, I don't love thinking about it that way, but it's like, if you find somebody that's your people, like, why not want to continue to work with them, and why not want to make that kind of a lasting relationship? So kind of focusing on how can you make them happy and keep your sanity and make you happy as well.
Totally.
Because it's a two-way street for sure.
I love that so much. So tell me, where can people find you online? I know you've got your Instagram, and I'm sure you use your different social media in different ways.
All the places, right? I had to consolidate. Like when you talked about personal, I used to have 2 Instagram accounts. I was like, no, I can't do this. So it's tinyblueorange.com, and then basically Twitter and Instagram, it's the handle tinyblueorange. Instagram is definitely a little bit more fun, photos of the dogs, videos of the dogs, and also some good business tips in there. But yeah, I love social media for that purpose of being social and connecting with people. So yeah.
And yeah, I'll definitely share the link to your new Client Love course that's coming.
Yes, absolutely. And if you sign up for that, there's a link at the bottom or on the thank you page for that little thing I'm doing with Morgan about how to find clients as well, because that'll be coming soon. So cool. Well, thank you
so much, Alison.
Yeah.
Take care.